Yeah, just one of the things we talked about too is, so for the original Fellowship of the Ring, the live action one, Peter Jackson used like every kind of camera trick available. Like he used some CGI, he used forced perspective, and a lot of tricks to not let you pay attention to the size of hobbits and so forth, And by changing his techniques all throughout that film, I mean shot to shot, your eye didn't become trained to pick up on any one thing. Some of that was happening here, where we were trying things that we didn't want to, then we had different tricks for different things. Does that make sense? So how we had to accomplish some of our location work and that kind of different ways so that you can stay in the experience and not get jarred out by, you just start to pick up on we're doing this one trick over and over and over. That led to, we had to go to interiors, and I mentioned earlier we had to pop these things up. So here was one of the early tests that Joel did of just putting the cards up. It actually worked pretty good. The corner was weird, the post problem. And then Joel was like, well, we could do a little 3D depth trick. So, I think we ended up doing some of this, right?
No, we did not.
No, we didn't? Okay.
No, we wanted to, but the problem was I was trying to displace everything just to give it a little bit more depth to some of the elements. But because the paintings were painted at a specific perspective, it broke. A lot of things, the window of what we could do is just kind of smaller on the paintings, and so certain angles just kind of broke, so we kind of dropped that idea. But this is part of the experimentations of what we could do.
So on the short film, I think what we were working through, and again, it ultimately was a proof of concept for us. And we were trying everything. We were like, let's just try it. Could we do this with our animation and technology? Yeah, let's try it out. One of those was we did a couple 2D characters where they were only art cards that we just moved. They were flat plain art cards. So inside the tool shed, when they're returning that thing, the guy behind the counter that takes the thing from is 2D art card. He's not an actual CG character. And it worked. We didn't have anybody complain and say, oh, he's not real. At the end, Commander Norm behind the desk, that business, another 2D art card. So very inexpensive, but visually satisfying. There's a bit of CGI pride that comes into this process, people, and I will tell you that I'm far more scrappy than that, and that we have to turn off, right? There is a pure pride where you're like, so what render, what rigging process were you using? Were you like there's this thing, right? What do you drive? Kind of thing, and we just, that's not our production, and it's not Andrew either. Do you see? It's like there's a bit of that. It's like it's just not us. We're not going to do that. It's whatever it needs to continue to engage you in the story. If that means shadow puppets, we're doing shadow puppets, folks. So we need a crowd. Crowd in CGI is super expensive, always, because you got to make characters that are unique and so forth. In this case, we made 2D art card crowd. And in downtown, they're just 2D art cards that are just kind of moving around a little bit. Why? Because we're passing through quickly, and we're not going to spend a lot of time with those folks. So they need to make you feel something, and then we move on. And we just have no shame in that. Like, no problem. Like, certainly, and I know a lot of other colleagues, producers and otherwise, that they just kill them to have to do that. And certainly animators, like, wait, I want my best. Whatever. Nobody cares. Anything else on execution, Joel?
Yeah, I think that, to come back to what you're saying, the experimentation was a big part of the process, and I think, luckily for us, we'd already had 2 shows of experimentation, know what didn't work, so we hit less walls, I guess, while we were doing it. And the other one was just kind of being honest with ourselves as far as if something worked or if it didn't, and there's some things that we got from Keith and Chris, and like, I don't think that works, and there's some things I was trying that showed to Chris, he's like, I don't know, I don't think that works, and we just kind of basically tried stuff, dropped ideas until we had something which really this led us to being able to watch the show, watch the sequence without being kicked out of it for the story.
I think that's really critical, and I hope that of anything else you take from our process so far, is it is so important to have community people around you who will tell you what is not working. There's something kind of Christianese and other things that is like, I want to be polite, but you need people that will tell you, I'm sorry, but your baby is ugly. It does no one any good, and in our world, we have a lot of ugly babies. Like our first version in animation of anything is not good, and we need someone to tell us that. There's this tension that exists between those, right? Which is the expense of production, in our case, and the delivery deadline that's out here, and the reality that's ugly. We hit one of these in the short film. We had a whole sequence, like I mentioned, an action sequence with the kids, had beaten Slarb, he got knocked down, and they're running out of town, and then it's this whole chase sequence with the toothy cow. It was actually really fun. But it was wrong. When we finally pulled it together and watched it all, we said, that's actually not this world. This world is all subdued. It's all like, don't talk to the fangs. There's no open conflict. It just wouldn't work. And I was the one who had to throw that flag, which I'm actually torpedoing my own project at that point, to say, guys, this baby's ugly right here. It's not cohesive with the world that's been designed and how it needs to go down emotionally. And so we had to torpedo a whole sequence that we'd worked on really hard. And luckily it hadn't done an animation, just some boards. But that's what kind of thing happens. And I think what I've loved about our team so far on this journey has been a lot of that. Open, challenging to say, that's not working. And I'm not just going to be nice to you and say, it's fine, right? And then go away and tell everybody else it's not working. I'm going to tell you it's not working. But we're all not critics, right? We're also professionals. So that means it's not working, but I wonder if this, right? The professional says, here's how we contribute to moving that forward. I'm also not saying then my ideas are good, mine are not, but they're at least pushing it forward, and maybe that provokes another thought in that artist, and we can find something that actually comes together.
And sometimes those things hurt when they come in like at midnight and you're trying to get it right, and he's like, no, it's like, ah. But the end product's definitely worth it.
Yeah, I've angered both these fine folks multiple times, hurt them in ways that I had to, really apologize later.
Yeah, I remember one night I got an image of from Nicholas from the what's it called? DreamWorks Prince of Egypt.
Oh yeah.
Stop frames for Prince of Egypt, and I'm like, are you kidding me? It's 11:30. I'm trying to get this shot looking good, and he's looking Prince of Egypt.
It was a lighting issue.
Do this, please.
Yeah, you're like, yeah, it's not. Can you do more like Prince of Egypt? Well, sure. Yeah, just throw me Prince of Egypt. The most visually stunning pieces ever.
But it was interesting because that
He actually went home that night early. He's like, I gotta go. He was just so like.
We got through it though. It was the bookstore. They decided the bookstore because the art that was painted was a little off as far as kind of what Nicholas wanted, and so it was getting there. It was getting to multiple passes of color correction. Now we need a little bit more. We need it to be like more dust or more airy, and the light shafts coming in, but it's too saturated. We need to tone down saturation. And so it was really interesting seeing what the original art was and where we ended up for the production. It was totally better, and but there were the growing pains of making it through from one artist to another, and like Nicholas saying, to the deadlines. So sometimes you have priorities that you want to get to it, but you put it aside because you're trying to get something done.
A lot of it is the awkwardness of communication between like invested creative professionals, and so it's basically like somebody you love, and we've all had experiences like this where somebody's come up to you or whatever, you say something, you say it just wrong 2 or 3 times, and you're like, you look awful. They're like, oh my gosh. You're like, no, something's wrong with you. And they're like, well, what are you talking about? It's like, no, it's a bad hat. And you take the hat off, and they're like, is that what you wanted to say the whole time? Just tell me it's the hat, But you went through like every wrong branch in the insulting them tree on the way to finally like, I just wish it was less yellow. And Joel's like, oh, of course, yes, okay, we can just do that, And I sent you Prince of Egypt, like, could you make it more beautiful and classic, like a
That's exactly what he heard.
But knowing what the art that Nicholas had though was, it's not like we were going from something totally different to something totally different. Like I knew what the style was and what we were going for, and so definitely had confidence that we were going to get there.
Yeah.
But sometimes your fatigue takes over, and it's like